Hello and good afternoon. As I have already probably been introduced, my name is Rachel Thompson, and I am the Executive Director of the Glynn Environmental Coalition. I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to share information to this board, and I deeply apologize for not being able to present live. I'd like to take an opportunity to thank my Brunswick partner organizations here today. Your flexibility and willingness to assist me in addressing the board, though I was attending a week-long conservation workshop, is deeply appreciated and has not gone unnoticed. By the time you're all listening to this presentation, I'll either be touring a timber mill in Barnesville, Georgia, or visiting a Georgia Forestry Commission pine tree nursery somewhere between Macon and Atlanta. The Glynn Environmental Coalition is an environmental justice, environmental health nonprofit advocacy organization. We are committed to our mission of assuring a clean environment and healthy economy for citizens of coastal Georgia. Since our organization's founding in 1990, community involvement in the decision-making processes at hazardous waste sites in Glynn County has been a top priority. Within the first few years of being established, we were able to secure US EPA technical assistance grants for all 4 nationally designated Superfund sites in Glynn County, 2 of which we still hold today, including the technical assistance grants for the LCP Chemical Superfund site that we're all here for today. It is because of this that we have a deep understanding of the complex environmental conditions present at the Superfund sites in Brunswick and a broad knowledge of the impacts that have plagued this community for decades, as well as the decisions that the EPA has made throughout the decision-making processes here. And so that is where we would like to start. The blight here in Brunswick is bigger than just LCP Chemical Superfund site. We want you to leave here today with a broad understanding of the blight that exists in our community and how that has profoundly impacted the people that live here. We hope that you will also leave here with a moral obligation to make strong recommendations to the EPA remedial project managers to do what our community is asking you to do, which is to clean up our community once and for all. Brunswick and Glynn County is home to 25% of the nationally designated Superfund sites in the state of Georgia. That is, Glynn County is home to 4 out of the 16 Superfund sites in the state of Georgia. Additionally, Glynn County is home to over a dozen state designated hazardous waste sites, some of which have been delisted without any cleanup activities taking place, leaving harmful contamination and economic blight behind in perpetuity. When compared to other US cities, Brunswick falls within the 75th percentile or above for every environmental justice index gathered by the US EPA, including Superfund proximity, we're in the 97th percentile, wastewater discharge, we're in the 93rd percentile, risk management plan facility proximity, which are the facilities using extremely hazardous substances, we're in the 91st percentile. All but one of Brunswick's hazardous waste sites lies within a 1-mile radius of a majority-minority population. Now let's dive in to some of our other Superfund sites and the decisions the EPA has made in the past. The Brunswick Wood Preserving Site housed wood treatment and preserving operations from 1958 to 1991. Regular use of chemicals such as creosote, pentachlorophenol, and copper chromium arsenate contaminated the site's groundwater and soil and required long-term cleanup. Other chemicals of concern included dense non-aqueous phase liquids and sediment chemicals such as naphthalene, benzene, and semi-volatile organic compounds. The cleanup was managed in 2 parts: the uplands or site-wide soils, sediments, and groundwater, and the ecological risks in Burnett Creek and other surface waters. Cleanup activities included in situ stabilization of soils, soil removal, removal, and groundwater containment. Containment in the groundwater in the western portion of the site over the years has failed, resulting in two separate explanation of significant difference actions. Currently, we are in the midst of a 5-year review process at this time, but monitoring indicates that the groundwater may still not be contained. The ecological risk assessments found that there were no unacceptable risks existed in Burnett Creek, and so therefore no cleanup activities were ever proposed for Burnett Creek. An individual visiting Burnett Creek can often see evidence of creosote floating in the creek today that has been disturbed by our tidal movements. Additionally, the Glynn Environmental Coalition continues to observe active fishing in the area. Our next site is Terry Creek Superfund site. Since 1911, the chemical plant waste have been discharged into Deep Dupree Creek, which flows into Terry Creek in Brunswick, Georgia. From 1948 to 1980, the Hercules pesticide facility discharged pesticide production wastewater. The wastewater contained a polychlorocampane pesticide and manufacturing waste, which was primarily marketed and distributed as toxaphene and among other names. The chemical plant wastes from the past 111 years are still present in the creeks and the soils at the site. Toxaphene is a dangerous mixture of over 970 chemicals that was banned in the US in 1990. The EPA released a toxicity assessment in 2019 that revealed the large number of unknowns about the toxicity of toxaphene, the chemical that is here in our environment. Cleanup activities are being managed in 3 operable units, as you can see here. The outfall dish sediments, Operable Unit 1, Terry Creek and Dupree Creek sediments, Operable Unit 3, and the dredge spoil disposal areas, Operable Unit 2. Though the EPA has been managing cleanup since the mid-1990s, in 2019, the EPA finalized the consent decree for Operable Unit 1, which only makes up 2.5 acres of the 216-acre site, and construction has yet to begin. The public has been deeply involved with the decision-making process at this site. During the consent decree public comment period, letters were sent on behalf of the Glynn County and City of Brunswick Commission, the Glynn County Health Department, our state representatives, and our state senators, and our congressmen, and over 20 other residents as well submitted comments, all with a unified resounding message. We want cleanup, not containment. And yet the EPA continues to move forward with a remedy that the community adamantly opposes. My last example before I close and allow the rest of the team to dig into the issues specific to LCP Chemical Superfund site is the Hercules 999 landfill. Initially, the site was home to a borrow pit, or an area created to remove sediments for use in another location. Excavated material was used for nearby road beds, and the borrow pit was later abandoned and naturally filled with water to become a pond. From 1948 to early 1980s, Hercules, which manufactured toxaphene at the Brunswick facility located across town, this connects this Superfund site with the Superfund site I just discussed, Terry Creek Superfund site. From 1976 to 1980, Hercules operated a permitted industrial landfill near the former borrow pit. Wastewater, sludge, and other manufacturing waste were dumped into 6 lined cells until the Georgia Environmental Protection Division canceled Hercules landfill permit and required closure of the landfill. Poor disposal practices at the site resulted in soil, surface water, and groundwater contamination. And again, I would just like to point out that those disposal activities started in 1976. So this was after the Clean Water Act and Clean Drinking Water Act. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency designated it a Superfund site in 1983. EPA compelled Hercules to investigate the site beginning in 1988. Toxaphene, benzene, and other chemicals of concern were found at levels which required cleanup of surface soil, surface water, and groundwater at the site. Cleanup activities, which included some removal, stabilizing, and capping site soils, took place starting in 1984 and progressed through the late 1990s. But as early as 1995, the site showed signs of off-site migration of groundwater contamination. For nearly 15 years, off-site groundwater investigations had halted because access had not been granted by the adjacent property owner to install additional monitoring wells. In 2019, access was finally granted, and in October of 2021, a long-awaited groundwater assessment report was finally released, showcasing samples detecting benzene, which is a class 4 carcinogen, as far as 500 feet away from the boundary of the Superfund site, and samples with levels over 20 times EPA's maximum containment level near a residential apartment complex. All of this to say that in every instance allowed, our community has asked for more cleanup, more removal, and more recovery. And though decisions have been made, and some of our sites have moved beyond the active stages of the Superfund process, we are actively living with contaminated areas and impacts. We are actively living with economic blight. We are actively living with potential and unknown impacts to human health. Unless the EPA makes a commitment for near complete removal, our community, our people, our economic vitality will continue to be stifled by the legacy contamination of these Superfund sites. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the remaining presentations from our group today. Have a great day.